Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 258 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the Second Amendment podcast that is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and with me tonight is the greatest hostess ever, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
I'm not even going to pretend that I'm in a good mood. I can't fake it. Earlier today, I just completely lost my temper and smashed a lamp into pieces against a concrete floor. And I will not go into detail explaining why, except to say that it was my father's lamp. That's the kind of day I'm having.
Now, the question is, when you smashed the lamp, did you instantly get some catharsis, or did you get well, that happened and now I have lamp bits to clean up?
I went into full Hulk smash rage because I didn't just smash it once. I picked it up, held it overhead, and threw it full force, both arms, into the concrete floor multiple times, all while screaming, "I hate you, I hate you, I hate you." And I managed to break the lamp, which may not sound impressive to you, but this is a lamp from like the 1970s or earlier, and it was made of wood and metal.
Okay. I see. I had always heard. I just imagined it was one of those glass or earthenware lamps, and so.
No. This was an electric version of one of those hurricane lamps that has. And it's electric, so there's no reason to do that, but it's got the internal glass cone for the flame, and then it's got the outer frosted glass, and it's pretentious in an old-timey way, and so it's made of metal and wood and glass, and it's very sturdy, and I made that sucker bounce until it was unable to bounce. I broke the metal in many places, and a lot of it was thick metal, too, so, I'm having a day, and I'm looking at the main topics, and most of them are pretty bad. I don't know how I'm gonna get through this episode, Weer'd.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll do the best we can.
All right.
Well, let's just tuck our heads down and.
You don't want me to ask you how you're doing?
I've been having quite an endless week of drama, and so no, I'd rather you not.
Have you considered smashing a lamp?
Did it work?
Yes and no. I mean, afterwards, I was still shaking and full of adrenaline and rage, and then of course I had to clean up the mess. But the reason I smashed it was because it fell over and broke the glass anyway, and so that was just the final straw. This is one of those cases where, objectively, I feel like I should be upset for breaking it, because, I mean, it was still a perfectly usable lamp, and I could have donated it, but I feel bad for not feeling bad, if that makes any sense to anyone.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, it was cathartic. I'm just not sure if I got what I needed, or if I just sort of kicked the can down the road a little bit.
I will just say that I have been experiencing so much adrenaline in the last week or so that I'm fairly sick to my stomach right now. I'm enjoying a fine glass of water, because that's the only thing I trusted to put into me and keep my voice going for the show. And so I think smashing a lamp and getting a little bit more adrenaline in my system is exactly what I don't need.
Okay.
But either way, yeah, I will just say that I will be heading up to Maine first thing in the morning to finish helping my parents move into their new place and help my daughter adjust to the massive change of her grandparents living in a different place. and possibly bumping into the odd fact that now the house that was always my house for the entirety of my 43 years of existence is no longer belongs to anybody in my family. So I don't think I'm going to be too terribly bothered. I mean, there's a little bit of it, but my parents are moving into a retirement community long before they need to move into a retirement community. And given that my father-in-law desperately needed to move into an assisted living facility, very much so, and because of his stubbornness, his last few years were very unpleasant. I am very, very pleased that my parents are taking this step when they are. So, but it means I'm going to have to be moving, and that's not going to be it's not going to be a fun day, I don't think.
Okay.
So, shall we dive into the topics and do the best we can?
Sure. Let's swan dive right into that empty swimming pool.
Yes. Well, this first story, I actually saw, I can't remember if Stephen Gutowski or Jake Fogelman was the reporter on the Reload, but I did it was on the paywall site, and I like to just put it in but by all means, again, if you're not a member of the Reload, it is fairly inexpensive, and I think it's well worth your while. But I wanted to see if there was a non paywall version of it, and I found this version similar, but not at all the same, with Forbes, and the title, they had me at the title. U.S. murder rate finally dropping, even as mass shootings reach record levels. And I actually didn't see, scrolling really quick to see, I don't think they actually say what the, as the U.S. reels from a long holiday weekend with at least 17 mass shootings that took the lives of 18 people. So mass shootings that have killed only one more than the number of the shootings themselves. So therefore, that should immediately get you scratching your head. And,
well, I mean, playing devil's advocate, that doesn't count people who were injured.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's still according to that's true. And so, but of course, this is I tend to side with the FBI mass shooting numbers, as well as noting that when people say mass shootings, you think of things like Columbine or Parkland or the Washington Navy Yard shooting or any of these other events where it is the Aurora, Colorado movie theater shooting. That's what we think of on this. And more than likely, these are probably just standard issue inner city gang violence events where there are more than one people injured in the course of it. And of course, I mean, possibly not even people injured by gunfire. Again, if you're running away from the gunfire and you slip off the curb and turn your ankle, you're officially a number. But the key thing that I wanted to get at is, of course, they're trying to throw some anti-gun stink on it, but our murder rates are dropping again, which is good because our murder rates had been dropping quite precipitously up until the COVID lockdowns started. I think they would continue to drop during the peak of the lockdown, but as soon as things started opening back up, whoo boy, there was a lot of murders and a lot of suicides. And so that was a big bump towards the gun violence numbers, which had been falling, and they are turning around, and hopefully they will continue to turn around. We will see and keep you posted, but this is overall good news, and the bad news they're trying to throw on to us here is, I would argue, fabricated.
I should probably add something, but
if you got nothing, Aaron, it's all good.
Yeah, I'm basically voting present.
Yes. So I'll just move on to the next story. And so speaking of mass shootings, there was one over the 4th of July holiday in Philadelphia. And this one took the lives of 5 people, and there were several more injured. And the article that I have here listed is from which one? This is the Philadelphia Inquirer. Ooh, this is a paper that is known to me. They are always the one that have the best anti-gun chivalry for the Pennsylvania area. But the killer here was there's a whole bunch of stuff on this. This was just a person who was off their rocker, and they're saying this person's motives are outlined, but it seems like they're all over the map. Of some saying that they were trying to clean up the streets. There's some saying that they were following the words of God, and
yeah. Let's just talk about how bad sugar crazy this particular piece of turd is. So this person was walking the streets with a rifle and was shooting at people and managed to shoot some children, and I think killed one or two of them. And then when this person was arrested by the cops, the piece of trash told the officers that the officers had done a good job, and that this mass shooting was an attempt to help the police because, quote, all these guys are out there killing people, end quote. So, I mean, naturally, the way to stop people killing each other is to engage in spree murder. Yes, that makes absolute sense to me. Sarcasm. This person was complete bat crap nut, and there's a lot of stuff going on that I'm not even gonna try and wrap my head around. One thing I will note is that this, it really galls me to call them a person, because I just figure anyone who engages in mass murder like this is filth. It's something I should probably work on. But anyway, prohibited person. And the question is, how did they manage to get these firearms? What was interesting here is that according to the article, and no, I haven't delved further because of the day I've been having, it says that he was convicted in 2005 of a misdemeanor gun charge, which should have prevented him from buying firearms, which tells me that this misdemeanor was probably some sort of domestic violence, and he was barred from guns via the Lautenberg Amendment.
There's another possibility that it could be that it was a very minor firearms charge of some sort, which would also where the stipulations of it, much like the best example I can think of off the top of my head is the movie Hackers, where he is convicted of causing mischief on the computer, and so he is no longer allowed to own a computer or a touch-tone telephone for the duration of his parole. There are some Hunter Biden's actual misdemeanor weapons charge for the 44 lying on the 4473. He is barred from owning firearms for the remainder of his life per the court order.
So anyway, I mean, there's that, and, well, okay, the article seems to make a big deal about when the police investigated his apartment, they found a handwritten will containing instructions about who had received some of his possessions. I mean, that's what wills are. I kind of see the point they're making, but I still feel it's a stretch. Mm-hmm. However, that said, oh, geez. This is not a good person. This is not a nice person. So you haven't brought this up, and I don't even know why I'm bringing it up, but when I heard about this like last week, there were rumors that this person was trans, or at the very least a cross-dresser, and I was just, oh god, I don't need this right now. So first of all, Weer'd, I thank you for not bringing that up, mm-hmm. And yet here I am bringing it up, so I don't know what that says. Really what I'm getting at here is that I'm just completely disgusted by this person's actions, and I feel like, and when I say lately, I mean over the past several years, if not more, Americans in general, when something bad happens, we look for something to blame. You know, why are my kids doing things? Well, it's because of the rock and roll, the drugs, the violent video games, the satanic rock and roll / Dungeons and Dragons. And it's just like, look, sometimes people are just messed up, and sometimes it's bad parenting. And so it seems like it shouldn't matter the sexuality, the gender, the anything of these people. This is very obviously an unstable individual. And, queer people are just like other people in that there are good ones and there are bad ones, and there are stable ones and there are unstable ones. And don't latch onto something you don't understand and use that as a justification for hate. You can go with this person was clearly unstable, or this person wanted to commit murder. There are things that you can blame that don't tar innocent people with a brush. And I'm going to stop now because I feel a rant coming on.
Yeah, I will note that this person was clearly had some mental health issues and was mentally ill, and then did something horrible and violent. And I will note that I have a relative who passed away several years ago, and they were in their 70s, and they had lived their entire life severely mentally ill. They had passed the bar and were a lawyer, and then schizophrenia took them, and then they were just living on disability for the rest of their life. It's really kind of it's sad how that sometimes happens. But this person, they had a whole lot of problems. There were a lot of issues going on in their life, but violence was never one of them. And even the aspects that we know for sure about these killers, and even on the fact that we have them together, there have been several spree killers that have been diagnosed as schizophrenic. But again, that doesn't mean that someone with schizophrenia is violent. Most people with schizophrenia are not violent at all. And so again, the psychological experts have not even been able to develop a profile of spree killers. I will say the one reason why I didn't bring up the cross-dressing, because that I have read multiple reports that this person was definitely seen cross-dressing. What that means has not been mentioned in any way, shape, or form. This person has not made claims for pronouns or anything. They have an ambiguous name. I don't know what. I've never seen this person's first name before ever, so I don't know if that is a traditionally masculine or a traditionally feminine name, or if it is just a sheerly unique one. I don't know.
All I can say is I haven't seen anything like it either.
Yeah, and so the fact that there were reports that this person had been seen is outwardly male and it's been seen wearing dresses around public doesn't necessarily point to a gender choice, possibly a fashion choice, possibly just crazy. And there certainly hasn't been any lines on that. And I will also say that we have several spree killers this year that have been labeled as trans, all of which have some issues. We, of course, have the Club Q shooter who will be spending the rest of their life in prison, who it was very clearly dressed male, outwardly male, unshaven, and did not appear in any way, shape, or form to be trying to conform to any female gender norms. I'll just leave it at that. And then when they were admitted to court, they were then demanding to have female pronouns. And so it's one of those that doesn't add up. The killer in Nashville, there is a lot of information. Of course, we don't have the manifesto. We may never have the manifesto, but this is one of the things that I have seen just little bits and pieces of that make me wonder, is this person allegedly was a trans man, but much of their social media profiles were all under their female birth name, and I have seen screenshots of the alleged text that they sent to their friend who they played basketball with as they were just before they left their car and entered the building. That essentially said that they wanted to die and they were going to die that day, and they signed it under their female name with, in parentheses, the masculine name that they went under, in parentheses, just to essentially, in appearance, to eliminate any confusion. And so there's some questions on, had they transitioned? Were they detransitioning? I don't know. And now there's this person. It's been very, very ambiguous. And so, again, that's another reason to use caution on that line of questioning. One thing I will note is, again, this person seemed to be praising gun control and police cracking down on guns in the street for it. And of course, the mayor, Jim Kenney, of Philadelphia, immediately made statements towards demanding more gun control. Good job. Furthermore, we had the shooter in Louisville, Kentucky, that shot up the bank that they formerly worked at, and they had openly said that they chose to bring an AR-15 because they wanted to bring more attention to how easy it was to get quote-unquote weapons of war. And again, do not have the manifesto. This is another question that I would like to see if there were answers for in this document. But the Nashville shooter brought along a braced AR pistol, but did not appear to use it very much at all. And this was all right around the time when Biden was pushing the ATF to put a ban on pistol braces that we are currently dealing with in the courts, and allegedly they had been very moved by a Washington Post series of articles on the deadliness and horribleness of the AR-15. And so there certainly is enough data points that I'm not going to say for sure here's the evidence, behold, but I will say that there are certainly lines pointing to that. It does seem that the gun control advocates' talking points might be inspiring some of these killers.
Well, combine that with something I know I've said multiple times. We've proved that suicide clusters exist, and with the sensationalization of these spree killings, I think a very strong case can be made that spree killing clusters now exist. And so I'm sure that it's all working together in some sort of, horrible circular fashion.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the inspiration of so many of these manifestos that are out there. It's very, very hard to find one that doesn't reference either the Columbine killer's names or the Isla Vista killer. For some reason, that person that engaged in that spree killing has a very, very large online following and has been the
Which one is Isla Vista again?
That's the incel killer guy. I might even have. I think that was Isla Vista.
Well, I'm currently drawing a blank, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yes. Yep. The 2014 Isla Vista killer. That is the interesting one where actually, the majority of the people that were killed were well, according to this here, actually.
Oh, that guy, the one who ran people over and then stabbed them.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay. That's why it wasn't registering, because I was thinking of a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Although, yeah, there was apparently a gun used, but yeah, it was primarily knife and car. Okay. Look, it was almost a decade ago. I have trouble remembering what I had for lunch. So...
But either way, what I am trying to say is that without naming that killer's name, that name comes up a lot when reading manifestos, as well as the names of the killers in Columbine. And of course, the killers in Columbine themselves were inspired by the federal building in Oklahoma City bombing. And Columbine was not a school shooting. Columbine was a school bombing that went horribly wrong, and their plan B was, well, their initial plan was to blow up the school and kill the vast majority of people, and then any survivors that were fleeing would flee into the parking lot per fire drill regulations, and they would be lying in wait with firearms to further increase the body count. And then they waited and the bombs didn't go. So then they just said, let's just go in and just start shooting people. And because police didn't really understand that style of crime at the time, it gave them ample opportunity to kill a lot of people, unfortunately. And I'll use that actually as a segue wanted to point out that there was an attempted mass shooting. And no matter how you want to put the numbers down, this does not count as a mass shooting at all. In Las Vegas, where a person with a rifle smashed the glass to get into a casino, and they attempted to shoot people. They fired one shot, and their firearm jammed. And then immediately security responded and shot them, and that jam was never cleared. And I say bravo to the security here, and also note that it certainly seems to be response is the key factor to how bad a spree killing is. And Dr. John Lott has on his website a list of a number of events that likely could have been spree killing, but someone with a concealed carry weapon was right there at the time and immediately engaged them and totally screwed up the spree shooting for that person, which is wonderful. And of course, we have many, many instances. Again, the Nashville shooting being a great example where the police went in hot and fast and ended up engaging the shooter and putting them down very, very, very quickly. And then on the other hand, we have Parkland and Uvalde with massive body counts, and the police did not engage the shooter. The police chose to stay in a location of safety while the killer was actively killing people, and the wounded were bleeding out. And that is a major factor that I am seeing adding up on these shootings on how bad they go.
So there are two things about this Vegas shooting that I don't know. They don't quite sit right with me. And once again, I tell you, I haven't delved deeply into it, and I acknowledge I should have. But the shooter, before he tried to shoot someone, he was standing outside an apartment complex, and he went in and pointed his AR at several people and then shot at a security officer, and then the weapon jammed. The thing is, though, people knew that he was there before he started shooting because he was standing with the gun outside the apartment complex and, quote, something was off, end quote, with him. Apparently, the gunman also spoke with a valet worker because the gunman told him that he was not okay and motioned as if he was going to point the gun at him. And, all right. You know, the valet called the police. Good for him. I guess what I'm saying is that if you have someone standing around outside with a rifle and he looks like he's pointing it at people and he's telling people he's not okay, I mean, telling the police is good, but maybe there's more you should be doing? Like locking down the apartment building? I don't know. I mean, he notified security. And for a valet, honestly, notifying security and calling the police is really all you can expect. I feel like security should have done more. And so the security guard who shot the guy, here's my problem with that. The security guard who shot him told police he was trying to escape the building after the gunman entered the lobby because he believed the gunman would open fire. And it was really only a matter of accident According to this article here on the Reload, as the guard exited through a side door, he saw the gunman leaving through the front door, and then he shot the attacker. And, alright, good for him. He shot the guy. I just have a problem with the security guard who, when he thinks that a gunman is going to cause problems, decides to flee.
I will say in the in the security guard's defense, we don't know what the company protocols are for such events. We certainly know that there are many private security people whose protocols actively say do not engage, essentially only only if they're armed, only fire when fired upon, and by all means attempt to stay safe and alert the police. We certainly know for the fact of with Parkland and Uvalde, whom I criticize greatly, they were following the FBI protocols and had been trained and were certified in the FBI active shooter protocols, which is call for backup, but actively go and engage. Don't wait for backup. Don't wait for stuff. Just grab what you have on you right now. If there's a rifle in the car, if there's a ballistic shield in the car, if you have tools with you, grab those tools, but do not wait for additional tools and get in and engage the shooter, because all of the statistics say that the moment police, and also ignore any injured or wounded or dead that you may cross before you engage the shooter, because the moment you can start exchanging gunfire with the shooter is the moment they're going to focus on shooting at cops and not shooting at innocent people that was their original target. And you want to be shooting at the cops and rather not the innocent people, because the cops have guns and they're going to be shooting back. And so I will definitely be chiding the police officers in Uvalde and the police officers in Parkland or Broward County because they actively disobeyed their training and their protocols to stay in a safe place. I can't say the same thing about these guards if they have a protocol in place that says in the event of an active shooter or a burglar or all of that, engage them, or does it say you're going to be in big trouble if you engage, and instead we want you to retreat whenever possible? So I don't know.
Well, the next paragraph says that the guard tells police he's not required to carry a gun while working, but does so by choice.
Okay, well that definitely throws in how they're trained. They're definitely not trained to engage the shooter because they're not expected to engage the shooter.
Yeah, I get that. I don't know. I guess I just feel that if you're a security guard, your first reaction shouldn't be, I'm going to run away. Especially if you're carrying. I mean, look, we're going to disagree. I know. I'm just saying this bothers me, man.
Oh, I 100% get you. There was, I worked for a pharmaceutical company that did not have a weapons policy when I first got my concealed carry permit, and I was carrying pretty much every day on that location. And I think I've mentioned before in the show that there was a person that had a severe mental health breakdown in there, and it was quite scary. And there's certainly always the talk of what if a spree killer targeted this place? And I was damn near positive there could have been a curveball in there somewhere, but I was damn near positive I was the only person on the premise that had a firearm. And it was a small company. I knew everybody that worked there. These were all people that I was very friendly with. Many of them I cared very, very deeply about. And I made a personal decision that in the event that I heard gunshots in there, I was going to be going towards the gunshots rather than away. That being said, you switch it around to being in a shopping mall or all that. The only time I'm going to be engaging a shooter in a shopping mall is if I am heading towards the exit. And it turns out the shooter is in between me and that exit, in which case I'm gonna do the best I can to put them on the ground so I can continue going towards that exit. But so it's all of a question. And unlike being a police officer, this is clearly an unarmed security position. Even though the guard was armed, his position was unarmed. And so they're certainly not going to have any firearms training as part of their protocols. And so it's just a question of what is his personal preference. And I totally get where you're going with that, Aaron, on that. But I will also say that my feelings on whether I would head towards the gunfire at a place of work, that where I'm working as a scientist, not as a guard, not as security, not as any of that stuff, but I have a firearm on me. It may be different now because I'm a dad, and I'm going to be leaving more than just a widow behind. So, yeah, it's complicated. Good on the guy for shooting him. I totally see your question on that, but that is an interesting thought experiment of if you are carrying a firearm, whether it be in your line of work or just in your day-to-day life, you should definitely be thinking about when you would engage and when you would choose to retreat. And be damn sure, because, again, retreating could get you to safety, but it will mean that you will not be a force multiplier in stopping that event to it. But at the same time, if you do engage an active shooter, there's a good chance that you will be engaged and you might get shot and killed. So there's a lot to think about there.
Yeah. I guess for me, it's okay. Yeah, I know I'm not a cop, and if there's a shooting at a mall, at a movie theater, yeah, my job is to protect myself and my family, and that's it. And if I have the opportunity, great, but I'm not going to seek it out. But I guess I just feel that if I'm hired as security, if my job is to protect people, I take that seriously. Mm-hmm. And no, obviously that doesn't mean I commit suicide. If to make things utterly absurd, if the guy's got body armor and a machine gun, and all I have is a 38, okay, I'm outgunned. It's not my job to die. But on the other hand, this didn't seem to be that situation. There was only like one gunshot exchanged, and
Well, it's also just a job, and I think we've all been at a restaurant where the person whose sole job is taking your order and serving you screws up every single aspect of that.
Yeah.
And doesn't seem to care in the least. So a job is a job, and the big distinction that I am making here is, again, officers that are trained to engage spree shooters have essentially taken an oath, and it's part of their protocol that they are going to conduct themselves in a professional manner. They are going to only just use justifiable amounts of force in detaining suspects and getting compliance from people they are arresting. And in the event of a spree killing, they are to call for backup, but not wait for backup, and engage immediately and not render aid to any victims, and simply get the gunshots to stop first and secure the area, and then deal with all of the aftermath. And when they don't do that, and it is, again, part of their job, yeah, it's no different than a cop that plants drugs on somebody, or a cop that searches a vehicle without consent. It's just they're breaking the rules. They're breaking that. I mean, there's more to that with the search without consent, but it's just they are disobeying their sole point of their job. In the case of an unarmed security guard, probably his training told him to get out and call 911 and be a good witness on where the shooter is, and not to engage. And for all we know, as soon as it happened, he panicked and he reverted back to his training, which is run away and call 911.
Okay.
All right. Now I've got to shoehorn a segue in for our first segment. I will just say that power dynamics. There were power dynamics in this pre-killing. I don't know. Oddball lost power the other day, and he decided it was inspired him to do a segment on power outages.
Welcome to Oddball's Corner Pocket. This past weekend, we had a little bit of wind around here. While we didn't encounter any tornadoes this time, my area did see winds at around 80 miles per hour on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. To give you some perspective, 80 mile per hour wind speed is on the low end of an E1 tornado or a Cat 1 hurricane. Needless to say, there was some wind damage. Fortunately, beyond some small limbs in my yard and a few hours of no power, I was saved from any permanent damage. But I know a number of folks that either witnessed damage or are now dealing with cleaning up damage from the storms. At one point, roughly 50,000 households were without power in the Nashville area. Oddly enough, a couple of the folks that I know that lost power were completely unprepared for an outage. So I thought I'd go over some of the things that I think you should be doing or have on hand. First is the immediate thing, lights. I know this might come as a surprise to some folks, but if it's dark out, it's going to get even darker inside. A flashlight is one of those things that I think everyone should keep on them. It doesn't need to be super bright, particularly large, or terribly expensive, but it should be good enough that you can navigate in a dark room with it. In my case, I pretty much always have a RovyVon A1 rechargeable flashlight hanging on my keychain, and it's all of $23. I typically also carry another flashlight in my pocket because, well, I'm me. But that little keychain light is perfectly serviceable for most situations. Oh, and those El Cheapo flashlights that you can get in bulk at Walmart, Home Depot, etc. will work perfectly fine. They just might not be as bright, have as many features, or be as conveniently shaped. I can already hear the comments. I'll just use my phone light. If your phone is anything like mine, it's cutting it close to make a normal day on its battery without recharging. I'll often see that my phone is at 30% by 8 o'clock in the evening. I don't want to use more of its battery than I need to if I can help it. Of course, I have other forms of lighting elsewhere. I have flashlights at my desk and bedside, and I have some lanterns where I can easily get to them. If all else fails, I have some candles. While candles will work, they're not going to be as bright as a flashlight or a lantern. They're not as convenient to use, and there's always the issue of an open flame to worry about. Whatever form of light you go with, make sure that you have extra fuel for it. In the case of flashlights and most lanterns, that comes in the form of batteries. This is one of the reasons that I've actually gone back to using flashlights that use AAA or AA batteries. I used to carry ones that use CR123 or some other form of more specialized battery, and while they could be brighter for longer, finding batteries for them proved to be annoying and expensive. It's nice to know that I can go into any gas station and pick up more batteries for my flashlight, and oh hey, it uses the same type as my TV remote. While we're talking about batteries, something that a lot of folks don't think about is battery backups, also known as uninterruptible power supplies or UPSs, for any important electronic device in your house. These are basically surge suppressors that have batteries in them that detect when they lose power and automatically switch over to battery power. These are usually sold for computer equipment and can either be fairly cheap and look like power strips in desperate need of a diet, to more powerful units that could be confused with the computer itself. Which size is proper for your device will depend on the power draw of the equipment that you're wanting to hook up to it and how long you want that equipment to run off of battery power. Most people are mostly interested in covering that momentary power loss, or up to 20 or 30 minutes, so they can gracefully power off the equipment. Of course, you can always get more powerful units that will run the equipment longer. And I must say, if you do decide to get a generator for your house, you will also want a large battery backup to power that gap between the power failing and the generator starting to run. One example of a device that you might want to run longer is a CPAP machine. I believe that Erin has done a couple posts on Blue Collar Prepping about the unit that she decided to go with for her CPAP. And while I think that particular unit is a little overkill for most people outside of hurricane zones, I'm also not going to argue with overkill in this particular area. I'm sure that Weer'd will include a link in the show notes to those posts. Frankly, I'm more interested in that CPAP machine running through the night, or at least until you're woken up by one of your UPSs singing the song of its people, as it lets it be known that it's running on battery power. A few folks I know that use CPAP machines have reported to me that the machine losing power causes them to wake up. Sadly, as of last week, I had a good friend who didn't wake up, and his wife was out running an errand. So, you can see why I'm stressing this particular point. The second thing you need is food. Remember, you're not going to have electricity, and depending on how long the electricity is out, whatever is in your fridge or freezer may be bad. While electrical outages around here are usually dealt with within a few hours, I have had to deal with instances where it was out for days. For this reason, I have canned and jarred foods in my pantry. Of course, you can also go with the various MREs and camping meals, but your mileage may vary on how tasty they are, and you're more likely to use that can of tuna or chicken for a quick meal at home than a military MRE. This can be important when you consider that, even with MREs, you should cycle through your supplies to keep them fresh. Also, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or tuna salad or what have you might be part of your usual diet, and they will feel less strange than unpacking all those little pouches in an MRE and getting ready to eat this strange food-type product when the lights suddenly come back on. It's a good idea to have some heat source other than your electric stove. For most people, this will be in the form of either a charcoal or gas grill on their porch. If you're stuck with an extended power outage, those room temperature meals might keep you alive, but they'll get old quick, especially if the outage is due to a winter storm and your house is also getting cold. Just a reminder to maintain proper safety procedures with whatever heat source you're using. A warm meal isn't worth carbon monoxide poisoning or burning your house down. I actually have a friend who, having lost power around dinner time, decided that he and his wife would run out and get dinner at a local restaurant. They were annoyed to find out that 1, a number of the local restaurants were also without power and therefore not serving food, and 2, the ones that did have power and were open were overflowing with other folks that had the same idea. It's much better to just stay home and have a sandwich if you can. Lastly, have something to do that doesn't require power or the internet. Time to break out a book or a board game or something. Assuming you have internet on your phone, that's going to quickly drain your battery. If all else fails, you could, gasp, talk to people face to face. Sitting there doing nothing gets boring quickly. Doing so in the dark and silent, doubly so. Oh, one last thing. If you need to contact folks because, say, you have worried parents, don't call them, if at all possible. Instead, send a text message. And by text message, I mean old school SMS text. Not Discord, not Signal, not Apple Talk, not whatever else the cool kids are using these days. A power outage that's affecting thousands of people will mean that 1, the telephone infrastructure is probably not at 100%, and 2, the phone system is probably oversaturated with people calling for reasons ranging from normal traffic to "No, Mom, seriously, I'm okay," to actual emergency. SMS text messaging essentially takes up zero bandwidth on the system. If you can connect to a cell tower, you can send and receive a text. So, what did I do last Friday when the power went out? Well, Friday is my regular board gaming night with some buddies. When the power went out, we were playing a game of cat magic. A fun, quick little game. You should really buy it. I calmly pulled out a flashlight out of my pocket and went and retrieved a couple lanterns and arranged them so that we could continue playing. It was late enough in the evening that we had already had our weekly pizza, so food wasn't an issue. After the game, I offered crash space for my guests, but they decided that it was safe to drive home. I told them to text us when they got home. After we received our texts, Panya and I went to bed in our very dark house after plugging in our phones to our battery chargers. In the morning, we checked the food in the fridge because fortunately the power was back on and nothing had spoiled. I hope that this was informative. If you would like to read more of my thoughts, I write at gunscarstech.com, and there's actually a new post over there. It's small, but it's there. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions for future segments, I can be reached at Oddball at gunscarstech.com or on the ACP Facebook group. Until next time, have a good one.
So Oddball made very good points, and he referenced my blue-collar prepping blog articles. Thank you. One thing that I do want to point out is that one of my very favorite pieces of kit is a combination flashlight, weather radio, and hand-crank turbine made by a company, I think it's French, so I think it would be pronounced Eton, E-T-O-N. And it's nifty. I have several of their products. And so what you have in that unit is you have a flashlight that will never run out because you can always crank it to give it more juice. You can turn it on, and the weather radio is very important in case you need storm updates. I'm not sure about where you and our listeners live, but here in Florida, we frequently need the weather radio to tell us about severe thunderstorms or tornadoes or things like that. And so it's always good to know.
I would argue that also in the event of any other wide-scale industrial disaster, act of war, et cetera, I guarantee the government will be using the weather band to also direct people on that, simply because that is something that people tune into on emergencies.
Yep. And it also has AM and FM radio, and there's that. And then there's also the fact that you can use this to charge your cell phone. It's got an internal battery, and it's got the ability to dump charge. I'm not sure how that would work with modern phones, because I first bought this like in 2015. So, the bigger, more battery-hungry phones might not be able to be dump charged, but hey, if you really need to get a text to mom and dad and your battery's running low, you can plug it in and you can crank for a bit and you can give it hopefully enough juice to send out a text. And this is one of the things which I recommend just to all my prepper friends because it's got a whole lot of really useful features in one convenient package. And there will be a link to that in the show notes.
And Aaron, you just planted a little seed in my mind on the imagine a weight loss protocol where all of your devices you use, your phones, your tablet, your if you've got nobody's got MP3 players anymore, but your wireless earbuds, any of that things that you've got, you need to plug them into a stationary bike that has the resistance is supplied by a generator, and you need to charge them all with your body, never plug them into the wall.
I believe that's what Will Smith did in I Am Legend.
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure if it was a bike or it was a treadmill, but he did something. He kept himself in shape and also charged his electronics.
Well, that is very interesting. I didn't see it because I did not hear good things, and I'm a huge fan of the book and the Vincent Price movie, the Charlton Heston one. What Omega Man is okay as well.
The movie was okay. The scene. Okay, this is going to be a spoiler, but for someone like me, I like to know when the dog dies, or if the dog dies, and the dog dies. And so that scene was very rough for me. And then they decided to give the movie a happy ending, which made no sense whatsoever. I've seen the deleted scene. I don't know if that was the original ending, where he dies, and it makes way more sense. So it was an okay movie. Actually, it was a good movie until the dog died. Then it was an okay movie until the ending, and it was like, what the hell did I just see?
Yeah, that's tough, especially with the fact that the novel was written in 1954. So if we're spoiling it for you, it's only because you haven't dived into it. And then in all of I believe in the Omega Man, he dies at the end as well. Certainly the book he's killed at the end. Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price, he's killed in the end. And I believe that also happens in Omega Man, though I only saw that one once and it was just okay, but I really like The Last Man on Earth with Vincent Price. That is a excellent and a very decent rendition of the book. But yeah, so you don't go screwing around with the ending, especially since like that's kind of the whole point of the book. Well, that bothers me, and that further steals my reserve to never watch it.
Well, I think the thing that really bothered me most about the movie, okay, they called the book I Am Legend, but they didn't explain why he was legend. Whereas in the book, it's explained that he ends up hunting the creatures, and he preys on them and becomes a symbol of horror, the way that the vampire became a symbol of horror for humans by preying on them. And there's a moment where he realizes, wait, I'm actually their vampire. Mm-hmm. And that's why he is legend. And they didn't touch on that in the movie.
So dumb. Yeah, no, it's got a lot of aspects of a vampire. The creatures, so to speak, have a lot of aspects to both vampires and zombies in the book and most of the movie adaptations. But then it is quickly noted as that turn in the end of Discovery is that, oh, wait, I'm, of course, as the Vincent Price one's titled, Last Man on Earth. I'm the last man on Earth, which means that, like, these creatures, no, they're not creatures. They're the people. I'm the creature. And they're allergic to sunlight, so he waits until the sun's out and then he sneaks into their houses and murders them in their beds. Very similar to how vampires would strike you while you're sleeping. And so, yeah, it's a very, very good book. I highly recommend it. But getting back on topic of flashlights, I love carrying a pocket flashlight. Just like Oddball said, it's one of those things of once you start carrying a pocket knife, you suddenly realize how much you need a pocket knife. And people who don't carry pocket knives will be like, why are you always carrying a knife? It's just one of those, like, hang out with me for a little while. You'll see how often that knife comes out and gets used. Same thing with the flashlight. See how often that flashlight comes out and gets used. But I will say, the phone flashlight, I think, especially around the house, it works very, very well in like the military doctrine on pistols, where you use your pistol to fight back to your rifle. You could use a flashlight to keep you on your phone to keep from stubbing your toe to get to where your big flashlights are. And
I don't think Oddball was saying not to do that. I think he was saying just don't use your phone exclusively.
Okay.
But yeah, if you use your your phone flashlight to get to your proper flashlight, yeah, I think that's fine.
Yep. No, he's right in the fact that you don't want to leave the flashlight on. That'll completely drain the battery and cause you all sorts of problems. And you're probably going to need that thing while you're in the blackout until power is back. But just it is a useful thing for if the power goes out and you happen to be just kind of walking around the house with your PJs, or you're dressed but you haven't started to go out yet, so you haven't really put on your full kit for the day. But then power goes out. Well, you probably have your phone on you, and you can use that flashlight to get to your proper flashlight.
So, because you said you were looking for flashlight recommendations,
mm-hmm.
My everyday carry flashlight is, well, it's small and it's cute, which is, it's not why I carry it, but I carry it because it doesn't take up a lot of space. It's from OLIGHT, and it puts out 180 lumens, and it runs on a single AAA battery. It is tiny, and so if you don't have a lot of real estate in your pocketbook or your pants pockets, or you just don't want to deal with a big, bulky light, here you go. And it puts out a surprising amount of light for a single AAA battery. And you can get it for like $15 to $20.
Well, that's very cool. And I have similar. This the Nebo Torchy is the one that I carry. This one's got like a turbocharge button where if you hold the switch on, it's got like it's 500 lumens normally, but if you hold it down, it'll give you 1,000 lumens for a very short period of time. And all that, and it is very, very, very small. It looks like it's probably slightly fatter and slightly shorter than the one that you carry. But the thing that I like about this size factor is because it is so small and light, I can very, very easily carry it in a firm grip, all while also holding onto a firearm. So it doubles as a weapons light. And I've found that it works very, very well as that, with the pistols that I carry. And so that's nice. But again, the problem I have is it's got a very similar pocket clip to the one the OLIGHT, in the fact that it's just kind of a little bent sheet metal thing that clips onto the body of it. And I've found that sometimes when I'm pulling it out of my pocket, the clip will pop off into my pocket, and the strain of getting that spring clip back around the flashlight eventually strains it and it snaps. And so I want something that's got a little bit of a stronger pocket clip, because now I've just got it where it's just floating around in the bottom of my pockets, where I can get to it, but it's not nearly as positive as grabbing something on a pocket thing, where I know the actuator button is going to be directly under my thumb when I grab it, and that sort of stuff. So again, I'm looking for recommendations for tiny everyday carry flashlights. That's absolutely a great recommendation, Aaron. And I like that. I like that size factor. Small and cute is definitely what I'm going for as far as the EDC goes.
So in this next segment, David talks about the Remington rolling block, and I still have no idea what a block is or how it rolls.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. In this segment, I'd like to return to my love of vintage weaponry and talk about a classic American firearm, the Remington rolling block. The rolling block action was originally patented by Leonard Geiger in 1863. Joseph Ryder, the plant supervisor at Remington Firearms, improved the design somewhat and then talked Geiger into joining Remington. Together, they refined the action even further. This rifle saved Remington from bankruptcy following the Civil War, which had caused a glut on the market of surplus arms at very low prices. The rolling block was such a successful rifle that Remington produced over 1.5 million of them in-house and licensed other countries to produce an untold number more. Over 100 nations adopted the rolling block rifle, and Remington had it in continuous production from 1865 through the beginning of World War II. In total, it's estimated that more than 70 million firearms worldwide were produced using the rolling block action during that time span. Perhaps unexpectedly, the first firearm which used the rolling block action to hit the market in any quantity was actually a handgun. The Remington 50 caliber model 1865 pistol was purchased by the U.S. Navy. This was soon followed by another Navy order for the model 1867 carbine. Unfortunately, these initial naval orders were small, only around 5,000 firearms total. The big break for Remington and their new design came in 1867 at the Paris Arms Exposition and the introduction of the Remington Model 1867 rolling block rifle. Shortly after the exposition, it was adopted by a number of countries. Between 1867 and 1868, Denmark, Norway, and Sweden all adopted versions of the rolling block rifle. Combined, they purchased nearly 100,000 rifles and actions. They also negotiated with Remington to produce the rifles in their own countries. In 1869, Egypt ordered 60,000 rifles and also arranged with Remington to produce the rifles domestically. Shortly thereafter, Spain put in an order for 85,000 rifles and 10,000 carbines. The dam was broken. The Netherlands, Japan, France, Argentina, Greece, Mexico, Colombia, Cuba, and many more countries ordered rifles, carbines, and actions from Remington. They were also purchased by several agencies and organizations within the United States, most notably the New York State Militia. Even the U.S. federal government got in on the rolling block action by licensing the Model 1871 for manufacture at Springfield Arsenal. Part of the popularity and longevity of the rolling block is because it's a very simple and robust action. Due to this, little can go wrong other than the occasional broken extractor or spring, and even those issues are pretty uncommon without abuse. At the time the rolling block was growing in popularity, the main competition was the British Model 1871 Martini Henry dropping block action. However, the Remington design only has 22 moving parts while the Martini Henry has 37. Though also a fine rifle, the Martini Henry generally didn't do as well in dirt and sand tests compared to the rolling block. While it was robust enough to survive the transition from black powder to smokeless, the introduction of repeating arms weakened the military value of the rolling block design. However, they were still used and issued by major powers through World War I and minor powers long after. Even in the current era, sporting and target versions of the rolling block are still being manufactured. Rolling blocks were chambered in dozens of calibers, both black powder and smokeless. A partial list would include 22 rimfire, 30-30 Winchester, 30-40 Krag, 30-06 Government, 38-55 Winchester centerfire, 43 Egyptian, 43 Spanish, 45-70 Government, 45-100 and 45-110 Sharps, 50-45 Navy, 50-70 Government, 11.7 by 51 Danish, 12.17 by 44 Norwegian rimfire, 7 by 57 Mauser, and 8 by 58 Danish Krag. This is far from an exhaustive catalog. Collectors can find a wide enough variety of options, markings, and countries of origin to satisfy any collection. However, for those who prefer something less venerable and valuable for shooting rather than collecting, Pedersoli, Uberti, and Taylor's all sell reproductions of the rolling block in various styles and calibers. For the amateur gunsmith, reference guides and how-to manuals on building a rolling block in a home workshop are also available. From the battlefield to the buffalo hunt to the target range, from post-Civil War reconstruction to the modern cowboy action shoot, the Remington rolling block has been there.
Remington Arms had created one of the world's most iconic rifles just in time to miss the U.S. Civil War. But 50 years later, it would still be going strong enough to see service in the Great War.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. We're always looking for people interested in submitting posts to the blog, so please check out the site. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the name Brena Bock, that's BRENA-BOCK. I'm also in anthologies published under my actual name. Look for David Bock on Amazon, just not the guy who writes the computer books. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
So, Aaron, you're saying you don't understand what the block is and why it's rolling?
No, and I acknowledge I could look it up, but okay, I don't want to throw David under the bus here. It's just when you're talking about a thing, you need to explain what it is and why it's called that.
Well, I will.
So,
I will jump in and note that. So think of a semi-automatic pistol. You've got the breech face on the back side that has the extractor claw and the little hole for the firing pin channel, and all of that. And in the case of a hammer-fired gun, the hammer can hit the firing pin and transport through that. That is essentially the breech block of the pistol. And John Browning came up with a brilliant idea of making the breech block integral with the slide, and that was actually a major patent, and that's why the Pedersoli what is it? Yeah, the Remington M51 it has that separate breech block to it. It was just ability to get around the John Browning patent. But rather than the breech block slides back and forth on a pistol slide, in this case, the breech block simply rolls backwards and essentially sits down. So this is actually one of the neat things about it is that not only is it a super simple action, but it's also like really, really fast. And I have a link in the show notes of Alex C. from the Firearms blog shooting one on a run and gun, like essentially an action shooting course. And he found that he actually got a fairly good time because how you reload it is you cock the hammer and then essentially do the exact same motion to the breech block, which will eject the spent shell and then give you a straight shot to insert your fresh cartridge. And then you simply close it up and your hammer's already back. You're ready to go. It's just a really, really neat action where it's also using the hammer as a way to keep that breech closed so it adds more strength to the action. But yes, it rolls in the fact that the breech block essentially flips downward as opposed to, say, the falling block, which is what the Martini Henry was that David mentioned, where you push the lever forward and the breech block drops down into the frame.
So the breech block is that times version of the bolt.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yep, the bolt face on either a bolt action rifle or on a semi-auto gun that's riding in the bolt carrier. The very, very head of that has the extractor claw and the firing pin channel is the breech face or the breech block.
Okay.
So there. And again, in the case of an AR-15, it is a rotating bolt that rotates in and moves back and forth. Again, this one is it rolls, hence the rolling block. And they're really, really cool. And I really want a rolling block pistol in something stupid. Like specifically, I tried to see if I could have one made for me that was in 7.62 by 54R, because that would be hilarious.
So I'm looking at the picture, and my grammar senses are wanting to object that it's pivoting, not rolling.
That is true.
Because when you say rolling, I think some sort of spherical or cylindrical action, and it's just pivoting on a hinge.
Yes. Yeah, it's essentially, you could picture it as the gun has two hammers, where one is the actual hammer that hits the firing pin, and the other is the firing pin can rotate out of the way so you can load and unload the gun.
Okay.
They're cool. I want one. And you know who else is cool, Aaron?
Me.
Aaron Paulette is so cool. Aaron Paulette is like Fonzie and Snoopy all rolled together. And who's cooler than Fonzie and Snoopy?
But a close second will be our listeners.
Our listeners are super cool. Yes, I'm calling you cool. You're cool because you're listening to us, and we appreciate it. I mean, it really is nice that you're listening to us, and we appreciate you. And so we thank each and every one of our listeners, but also we have extra thanks to our supporters on Patreon. To become a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up, and you can get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACP film tracks, and the ACP mag dump. Trust me, they're worth it.
Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
I got a blog. It's called Weer'dWorld.com. That's WEERD World.com. And I'm also on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network. And our latest one, Ryan wasn't feeling well, and so Oddball and David both came on, and we had ourselves a fun little show.
Fun little show.
Yes.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
He rolls and I pivot. Our actions are assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everybody.
Good night.